There we go. Sorry, I messed up the little intro here. Welcome, guys, back to the next video in this series. Today we're going to continue with the snake lamp. This is where we left off. But remember, just quick little advice for all of you that are new to the channel. In the comments, you're always going to find some links to our premium courses. We are a school, a service that provides different kinds of premium courses for you guys, and you can find them on the link. So there's several classes that I teach. There's other amazing teachers in our curriculum as well that are going to be able to teach you all the abilities you need to become a great 3D artist. So let's jump back here into our little snake scene. And now I want to model or modify the snakes just a little bit before we jump onto ZBrush. And the reason I want to do this is I want to save myself as much time as possible in ZBrush by making sure that the base mesh that we're going to be using is as clean as possible. So for instance here, I'm going to scale this head a little bit down, and I'm going to give it a little bit more height here. Same for this neck. Let's just give it a little bit more height so that I know that when I bring this into ZBrush and I smooth it out, it's going to be a little bit easier to sculpt. Now, as I've mentioned before, I'm pretty confident, pretty sure that this guy, the artist that did this concept, modeled some of the parts in 3D. And the reason why I think he did that is because some of the curvatures and things that I see here are really, really perfect on the concept. And drawing that level of perfection, you're either using a lot of rulers and elements to make sure that the drawing is as clean as possible, or you're using a 3D piece as a base to paint on top of, which is completely fine, by the way. In the concept art world, everything goes. So if you can get to this position by modeling something real quick and then just modifying it, props to you. Now, for instance, on this snake right here, as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm modifying a little bit of the curvature to get something that looks good on this particular angle. Now, if I press number 3, we get to a very close position of how this is gonna look. Actually, it's those are pretty pretty damn close, I would say. So I'm pretty confident that this guy used similar techniques to what we're doing here for the modeling. The only thing that I see difference is the insertion point. Mine is a little bit lower. So I'm just gonna grab all of these guys right here and bring them up, so it goes right there on top of the little line. There we go. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That face, of course, needs to go away. And the only thing I need to do is I'm just gonna say mesh on the modeling tab, mesh, and I'm gonna hit smooth. This will make that number 3 modifier permanent, and this is a perfectly good mesh that we can use in ZBrush to give this thing a little bit more life. Just a couple of little details here and there. The eyes, of course, maybe a couple of scales. There's like a little bit of a edge there that we can sculpt, and that's gonna make it look very, very nice. So that's it for this one. I think the thickness also seems to me to be correct. I do think that up here it's a little bit wider. It's like a cobra. So what we can do here is we can just grab this guys and just give it a little bit more thickness there. And then this guys, and give it a little bit more thickness as well. And then we can grab like the neck here. I'm just gonna make the gradient a little bit smaller and just push it in a little bit or out. Probably out a little bit. There we go. I don't love the transition there, but it's a little bit better. Let me go back. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab it higher. There we go. That's way better. Now, this one of the things that I noticed is that it's a little bit too thick. And the problem is I already erased the curve that we used to create this. So I'm going to show you one way in which we can make it thinner. And it's actually very simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these edges and delete them. And then select these edges and delete them. And as you can see, we pretty much have the exact same shape, just with less volume. And now the only thing we need to do is grab this edge all the way to the top to this edge. And then this edge all the way to the bottom to this edge, and we're gonna hit this button right here. We're gonna bridge, and that pretty much reduces the volume completely. I definitely see that we definitely lose a little bit more volume on this one than what we do on the small one. So I want to make sure that the curvature is as nice as possible. So I'm gonna go to my right view, hit number 3, and then this guy's just a little bit of tweaking here to make this curve really, really nice. Just a tad bit here and there. And one thing we can do to get this sort of effect without losing as much roundness is, of course, a bevel. So I'm gonna go here, double click, double click, double click, and double click, but make sure that the bevels connect up here and down here. so that we don't get any engons. And we're gonna bevel. Uh-oh. Looks like Maya wants to crash. No, Maya, don't crash on me. Don't crash on me. Oh my god. That's fine. You know this happens. And I know every single time Maya crashes, I just hear all of my students that are pro Blender, and they're like, see, Blender wouldn't do that. I know. It's Maya. It's part of the job. So let's keep going here. Let's just wait a second for this to load. Now, one of the cool things that I like about the newest versions of Maya, I think they started doing this from 2018 on, is that they save you. Sometimes they save, or it saves this thing. And more often than not, you're going to get the thing. So as you can see, we even got the bevel there. So first thing you do, every time this thing happens, first thing you're going to do is save your scene. Please save your scene. Because I've had students that are like, oh, it crashed, and then, oh, it saved, and then they continue working, and it crashes again, and then they didn't save, and usually on the second one, you're not gonna get so lucky. So I'm gonna save this as an increment. There we go. And here, since we still have the bevel, we can modify the fraction a little bit. Let's add another segment there, and that's gonna give me this very round effect. I think maybe 2 segments is way too much, so let's go back to 1, because I do see that this is a little bit rounder, a little bit more organic than the rest of it. So there we go. Now, of course, the head is way too thin, but that's something that I think I'm going to be modifying inside of ZBRUSH. I mean, we can start giving it a little bit of volume here. Oh, okay, so we have something here, a little bit of an error. That's fine. Quick way to fix it, just delete all of that. Shift, double click, and just bridge. Make sure, so if this happens, you just need to use the twist modifier until the twist works properly. And let's add 2 divisions. Let's play around with the twist again. Or sometimes it's not the twist, it's the bridge offset. There we go. So I'm gonna go to the right view. And let's build a little bit more volume here. Careful with these lines. We want to keep them as straight or nice as possible. Very balanced. I think I am going to add one more line here just to give the head a little bit more like weight. There we go. See that? That's a little bit closer to what we're looking at. Now, of course, we're going to be sculpting. There's a little bit of sculpting that we need to do, but this is looking good. Now, of course, we need to preserve the curvature as nice as possible. So let's start modifying this thing. So the curvature here is very clean. For instance, here I think we can get away with softening that out. So I want to have this very nice S curve going all along the surface. And there we go. Number 3, just make sure that this thing goes nice. For instance, there, I definitely see that this is a little bit too thick. So let's bring them in. So when we hit number 3, on both objects, the overlap is as minimum as possible. Again, a little bit of overlap here and there is not gonna destroy the object or anything. It just looks nicer when things are not touching. Makes it look like it's actually built on purpose the way we intended to. Let me grab that that inner edge there and just make it slightly bigger. There we go. Look at that beautiful thing. Oh, I'm trying to see if there's a little bit more thickness. So it's a very broad like thing over here, like I'm not sure what the name is. Crown. I know a lot of our students are from India, and I know you guys over there have cobras, or at least I think I've seen some videos where they're. I know they're not like laying around everywhere, but I know that they're like in your country. There might be some like areas where they're a little bit more common. Here in Mexico, we don't have cobras. We have the rattlesnakes. That's sort of like most poisonous. Is it poisonous or venomous? It's venomous. Poison is when you eat. Venom is when you get bitten. Or so I know cobras over there. So I don't know what the name of this part of the cobra is, but that little like sort of like shape. Now I'm definitely gonna add one center line. Center lines are really, really good because they're gonna help with symmetry. They're always good to have. And that one also has a center line. Now we can also do the smooth here. So I'm gonna say mesh smooth, just to get more geometry and a cleaner look overall. I still think, before we do the smooth, I still think this curvature is a little bit weird. You can see there's like a point there on this line right here, this one. So very important that we try to clean this thing so that when we smooth this out, it looks as clean and as continuous as possible. And it's one of those things that you really need to pay attention to, because otherwise things can get messy. So there we go. That's it, guys. That's all the modeling done here. We're now going to jump into ZBrush, and we're going to sculpt. Not only the snakes are we going to sculpt, we're actually going to add a little bit of sculpting to everything. So before I do that, I want to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to select all of the geometries. I'm going to delay history and freeze transformations. I don't necessarily need to center the pivot points, but we definitely need to group this into a single group. So I'm going to say Control G, not the ambient light. So let's Shift P to unparent. Let's call this snake lamp, and let's start like getting this into position. So now for the glass, I think we didn't model the glass. So let's do this real quick, because we are gonna be sculpting a little bit of the glass, because this seems like a dirty glass. So I want to sculpt scratches and stuff into it. So I'm gonna delete, as you can see, the bottom part there, and here on the lower area, I'm also gonna grab this face and delete it. Delete this cap. Oop. Now, here's the big question: do we want to add thickness to the glass or not? Technically, we should. That's the best deal, or that's the best thing we can do. It will increase the the poly count and everything, but we should. So I am just gonna Control E, and the reason we should do it, it's a very technical reason, but I'm gonna show you it anyway. When you're rendering and you have a material, rays of light are gonna hit the material. When the material is a material that's a non-glass material, the rays will just bounce off, and you'll get this information into the camera, letting you know what's the color, what's the specularity, what's the roughness, and blah blah blah. So when you have a material that's glass, if you have a single layer, what's going to happen is this thing is going to hit it, it's going to bend depending on the index of refraction that you have on your glass, and then it's going to eventually come back to the camera and give you that information. However, if you have thickness on the glass, like this, it's going to hit, bend, and then it's going to hit the next one and bend again. Okay, sometimes it will bend on one side or the other, again, depending on the index of refraction. And this like bends, like double bend, which is what you usually have in anything. Every single object that you have has thickness to it. Those are going to give you some very realistic results. So that's why it's important that we have thickness here. So mesh display, we're going to reverse this, and we're going to grab the edge here, and here, and we're just going to bevel. Small fraction, 2 segments. There we go. So that's like a hollow, or not, yeah, it's a hollow, thick layer of glass that we have. We're still missing the rope and the fire in the inside, but we're gonna do those at the very end when we hit the render stages, because the cotton thing we don't even need. We can use the material, but it's not as important because it's gonna be pretty much the fire is gonna cover it, so we're not too worried about that. Now I am just gonna grab everything again. Let's keep on cleaning. So that's glass, lap handle. Let's call this small snake. This is small hook. Whatever works for you. Let's call this feeler cap, feeler body. Let's call this valve, main snake, lamp top, and this is, I think it's, let's call this the secondary valve. There we go. So now we'll grab everything here, and let's smooth this. One thing that you definitely want to do, it depends on how you're going to work on ZBrush, but if you want to work with everything on the same like layer or in the same subtool, which is I think what I'm going to do to just keep it simple, you definitely want to make sure that everything is as close as possible to the same level of resolution so that things work a little bit better. So I'm just going to grab everything here. I'm going to say just all of this. File, export selection, And on our assets folders, let's create a new folder. Oh. Let's call this snake lamp. And we'll call this snake lamp Maya out. And the reason why I'm calling it Maya out is so that I know that this is coming out of Maya. So it doesn't have UVs, it doesn't have anything. Let me make some space over here. Do you guys have Takis where you're from? This is probably my favorite like snack. Takis. There's Takis Fire, which are very spicy. Strongly recommend if you can get your hands on some Takis. They're really good. So let's go import and let's go to our assets folder, snake lamp, and we're just gonna import this. When we import a FBX, you're gonna get this option. You're gonna get the option to import the materials as polygroups, as subtools even. Like if each object has a different element, you can do it that way. In this case, I don't want anything, so I'm just gonna hit OK, and we should have each tool in its own separate element, like this. And the reason why we're getting a separate element here is because each element was a different geometry. So that's one of the very cool things about FBXs, that you're going to be able to import everything at the same time. So let's go with the small snake first, just to get a hang of what we're doing. So I'm just going to shift click on this guy to isolate everything else. Or you can also go like this. You can go down here to dynamic solo, and it's kind of like isolate select in Maya. And I'm going to hit Control D. And Control D again, and Control D again, and Control D again. Let's go all the way to almost 1,000 points. I'm gonna bring this into my second monitor so I can see the thing here. And it's actually very simple. I mean, we really don't have to worry that much about the form. I see a little bit of a plane. Oh yeah, okay, symmetry. So this guy is on the side view, right? So if we turn symmetry on, this is not gonna work. However, if you go to stroke, and you change the, no, sorry, it's not stroke, no, it is a stroke. No, transform. Transform, we activate symmetry, and we're gonna do C symmetry. And then we're gonna say this local symmetry, and it's gonna go into the local symmetry of the actual tool. So I definitely wanna get rid of X symmetry. There we go. And that way we're gonna be able to work on the snake. So I'm gonna start flattening this out because the head of the snake seems to be a little bit like triangular. I'm going to use my clay buildup to add a little bit more volume here. Very, very softly. And then just add and remove a little bit of volume. And then again, trim dynamic. I really love trim dynamic for this kind of like metal things because it really gives this sort of like hammered look to it. Where people just like are in the forge and they're just forging the thing. So for like swords and axes and stuff, this sort of like very flat effect looks really, really nice. And that's something that the concept doesn't show really, but that's very common in metalwork. If you have any sort of like metalwork on your place, you probably can see this. And especially metalwork that's been done by hand, right? Not metalwork that was done by machines. Because again, machines are very perfect. They tend to do everything in a very perfect way. So here, for instance, I'm really gonna push this line in, and then softly like merge it back here, because the eyes are gonna be right around here. Now I don't want the snake to look derpy, so let's make sure that the eyes look very, very nice like that. There we go. That doesn't look derpy, so that's good. Now let's fix this sort of I'm gonna call it crown. I'm not sure if that's the proper name, but I'm just gonna call it like that. And again, with trim dynamic, just polishing this. Now snakes usually have the jaw, so I'm gonna add a little bit of volume here, indicating that there's the jaw. And again, trim dynamic to flatten this out. Now you might be wondering, why are we not adding the circles of the eyes? Because if you just like draw them here, it's gonna look very weird. It's way, way easier to just grab a sphere. Let's go dynamic solo. Make the sphere very, very small. Let's start this on. There we go. So I'm gonna bring this thing right about there. And even though this is an extra geometry that we're gonna have to consider later on, it's just gonna look way better. So there we go. And we say C plugin, transpose master. No, not transpose, sorry. Mirror. Subtool master mirror. And we're gonna hit the Z axis, hit OK. It's probably not gonna be exactly where I want it, which is completely fine. You can see it's not mirror because it's not following. That's fine. I'm just gonna mask this out, invert it, and then move it. They're just for reference because eventually we're gonna replace them with proper spheres inside of Maya. So they're just for reference. There we go. Now we can jump here. Let's give it one more division. And with my clay buildup, I'm just gonna add a little bit of an eyebrow. Something. It's not an eyebrow per se. It's just like the indentation where these things are gonna be. Don't be scared to really bring your geometry up to get rid of any and all of the details. And now I can see there's a little bit like a hard line going here. So I'm just gonna add it and then start smoothing it out. And again with trim dynamic, just like flatten this out. So we create this very nice effect. Cool. I'm gonna go a couple of levels down and I'm gonna use my move brush to clean up the curvature here. Because you can see there's a couple of bumps here and there that I don't really like. You can even smooth out. And there we go. Now, here's the cool thing. I'm gonna use my trim dynamic and I'm gonna go into a couple of areas here just to again break up the shine of the element. I want this to look like hammered metal. So you can see that by just modifying the silhouette there, we're getting this very interesting surface detail that's not gonna really modify our low poly, but the normal map that we're gonna be using eventually will catch those little like nicks and knacks, and that's gonna make it look very, very cool. Now you don't need to do it everywhere. You can keep certain areas very flat, very smooth. So if you want to smooth a couple of areas, that's fine. But I strongly recommend giving this sort of like finish to it. You can see it on the texture. The artist that did this concept actually added a little bit of that texture to the whole thing. So again, it's very important. That's one of the main things that 3D does that we need to be careful about, especially as prop artists. 3D tends to do everything perfect. I've mentioned this so many times before. So when we introduce a little bit of damage in things that need to be damaged or that benefit from being damaged, that really, really brings the whole thing to another level. Things that don't need damage, for instance, if you were doing a commercial for like a new phone or a new set of like sneakers or something, then yeah, you want everything to look completely perfect. But for this kind of things, for cinematic props where there's a little bit of story or they're gonna be inside of a movie or something, then yeah, you definitely benefit from this sort of thing. I felt like there was like a mosquito or something. Cool. So there we go. That's the little snake there. So we're gonna do the same, but for the big snake now. Let me move my image, my reference point, because the big snake's it's a little bit more complicated. So I'm gonna Control D a couple of times, and just with using the topology that we have here, I need to start modeling and giving it the careful here. Very important to turn on symmetry. There we go. So the eyes are gonna be roughly about here. And we're gonna start building the nose there. Let's give it another division. Bring this forward. If we need to, we're gonna do a little bit of Dynamesh. I don't think we need it just yet. We can work with this first. Trim dynamic. It's a little bit more squarish. Has this, of course, like triangular look to it. And it has the mouth and the jaw, which it's missing, so I'm gonna add it. So just clay buildup here. To add the sort of jaw. There's a little bit of an overhang from the top of the lips, so I'm gonna draw it right there. The head seems to have like some sort of like big bumps up here. And it's all about construction. Whenever I sculpt, especially this sort of thing, I always tell my students, focus on the primary forms first, then secondary forms, then tertiary forms, and all of that's gonna really, really help. So it seems a little bit hollow here on the center, so let's add a little bit of volume there. Then we can start introducing the trim dynamic effect to trim a couple of things down here. I'm gonna use my Udemy standard to carve in the little mouth. It goes really far back. And then you can use the Udemy standard in the negative action with the Alt key to create like the little border there. There we go. I'll start adding a little bit more of a jawline. This is one little thing, just quick parenthesis here. Anatomy is super important. So if you check the skull of a snake, for instance, you're gonna be able to see that the jaw is very thin, but it has a very big bone back here, similar to us as humans. And so this line right here, this bone that's kind of like protruding down here, that's what we would be adding right about here. It seems to be a little bit more arched on the concept. Shorter snout there. Let's make this a sharper face. There we go. And it has this sort of like bumps here on the top of the eyes, like about here. I really like that because there's like a center line here, and then this whole thing is just like this. Now something that's going to be very important, of course, is the borders on the sides here. So I'm going to start adding the main shape of the border here. I can definitely let me isolate this. I can definitely see a little bit of volume here, like on the body of the snake going down. It becomes flat, of course, as we approach the thing that looks like a handle, but up here it looks like a sculpture. So I'm gonna add this, and that's gonna allow me to blend this little crown a little bit better. So I'm gonna use my oh, careful here. Okay, so what's happening here? My brush was way too big, and I was going across. Remember, we have this thing called the back face mask. You can find it inside of brush, and then it's on the auto masking back face mask. It's per brush, so that's why I have it on my custom UI. So that every time I need to add it, I can add it, and this will allow me to draw here the kind of like the stomach and the body of the snake, without pushing on the backside. Now the backside, it does seem to be a little bit rounder, so I'm gonna add a little bit of volume here, again, for sort of like the crown thing. Smooth out. And then I'm gonna use my clay buildup again. Start doing like the little spikes on the sides, because it has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 7. Like this sort of Now you can see that I'm working with very little polygons still, because I just want to focus on the main shapes first, and we're gonna do the rest of the things later on. So if I see it here from the side, this thing seems to be very, very flat. I think we can push them a little bit more, just to create like an edge. Like this. Oh, careful there, because we're using the move brush, and the move brush is very intense. Oh, that's weird. I mean, maybe it's because it's very, very thin on this area, which could also be a problem, but we need to be very careful here. So we can use the inflate brush to bring some volume back. It's very important that we don't overdo it, because otherwise things are gonna start looking very weird. Let's turn on back face masking for now, just so we can move everything here. Now I'm gonna turn it back on. Small brush, and just Try to recover some of the volume from here. Okay, perfect. Smooth out. Recover volume. Smooth out. You always want to keep the shapes right. So if we have this very nice like round shape going down, like this curvature, I want to preserve that. So that's why I'm being very careful here to make sure that the silhouette remains as clean as possible. Now the snake seems to have like a little bit of a shelf here on the nose. Let's add the eyes. I think that's gonna really help. So pen, sphere. Let's get rid of this. R. Smaller. Not super small, but just small. Right about there. And we're gonna say C plugin, mirror on the x-axis. Y. Okay, let me turn off local symmetry. C plugin, mirror, x-axis. It's really weird. Where is it? C plugin, mirror, x-axis. Huh. Extremely weird. Okay, I'm just gonna just duplicate it like this and try to make sure it's as close as possible. It's not perfect. One other thing we can do is, now that we have two of them, we can just go into geometry. Modify topology, mirror and weld. Is it off axis? It looks like my thing is off axis, but it wasn't off axis in Maya, was it? Huh, that's weird. Maybe I moved it at one specific point or another. Well, whatever. Let's just focus on one eye, and that's gonna do it. So one thing you can do here is just keep one eye, go back here, and since we have mirror turn on, whatever I do here will happen on the other side. Oh. Huh, it seems like I did mess up the geometries. There we go. How are we doing on time? I don't want to go super long on this thing. Oh, we're already at the 30-minute mark. Okay. So let's just keep going just a little bit longer. Hopefully you guys can hold just a little bit longer. Now, what I'm probably going to do, because again, I don't want this series to be the whole month, of course, and that's one of the challenges that we have here in the channel. I need to make sure that all of the things that we teach you are done fast enough so that it's not boring, it's entertaining. But usually on a commercial and production level, I would have like 8 or 10 hours to do this whole asset. We've been working on this for what, like 1.5? No, probably a little bit more, like 2 hours. But in production, you would have way more time because you need to make sure that it's perfect. So I'm probably going to continue working on this guy off camera just a little bit, just to finish the sculptor. I'll show you the sculptor, but the next step is going to be bringing this back into Maya and doing the UV so that we can start working on the textures and the remaining things of the character. So yeah, that's it for this one, guys. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye bye.